So we've talked a little bit about the history of why humans are referred to as resources. It comes systemically from an environment where we were trying to be as productive as possible with the time frame we have. But we've learned nowadays that just because you add more people to the equation and more hours, it doesn't necessarily always mean more output, particularly with knowledge work. The remaining topics we have are human resources, the oxymoron, the dehumanization dilemma. What are the alternatives and what does the industry say? I will allow anyone at random to choose one and we'll go there next. First one to speak.
Dehumanization dilemma.
All right, let's go right into there. So bringing your attention to here, abstraction. And I think Mindy alluded to this in the introduction. If we refer to people as resources, we're dehumanizing them. We're not thinking of them as people. And there's a bit more about this on human resources and oxymoron. But what do we recognize about the top left-hand corner here? What does this look like?
A matrix.
Yeah, it's a matrix. It's lines on a spreadsheet. It looks a bit Gantt chart-like. This is often, or has been often, how projects are planned. And what it does is it pulls people back to just being a line on a spreadsheet, a line on a Gantt chart, something to be disposed of if necessary. We've got too many of those. We don't need those anymore. So we've got resource 7, 8, 9, 10. This is a lot of how projects have been planned. It's a lot of how headcount is planned. They've just become lines on a spreadsheet because people are thought of as resources. How many people have been working at a company and they've heard someone say, well, our people are our greatest asset? Who's heard that before?
I've heard it before.
Yeah. I'm certain lots of people have had it before because it's just one of those lip service responses that many companies say, but then they don't often back it up with action, with demonstrations that actually people are our assets. What happens when you think of people as assets to be sweated is that they end up being burnt out, worked longer and longer hours. If we look at just some of the visuals below here, this is a bit of a visual depicting how many lines of connection there are between people working in teams. If you've got a 3-person team, it's quite simple, all the way up to a 14-person team. The more people there are in a company, the more it can be that you just feel like a number, because there's just so many people involved, and it can make it easier for people that have to make those difficult decisions to make those decisions, because if they're thinking of them as less than people, it's easier to make, to do that, because it can be quite emotive. So one of the things I'd love to ask you is what metrics do we track in the workplace today? What are you personally, what are you measured upon? What metrics do we track with our teams? Why don't you share your thoughts again via Miro, speak aloud, however you prefer to do so. So I can see hours worked. Yeah, very common one. How many hours are we working? Obviously, many people have contracts, number of hours in a day. The number of stories delivered. Does the number of stories delivered always mean value being delivered? Arguably not. Attendance, yeah. Performance management. Have you met your goals? Happiness score. Okay, I like that someone's added something to do with actually how people are personally feeling. NPS, yeah, team happiness. Usually team happiness is kind of an ENPS, employee net promoter score, with NPS being customer net promoter score. And yeah, attendance, you're tracked on how many days you're well and aren't. Often there are metrics tracking how much you're utilized. If you are in a consultancy, it's the number of days you are billable to a client. The reason I've asked this is often what happens when I ask this is that so many of the things that we're tracked on aren't actually related to treating people like people. They're often hours worked, productivity, stories delivered, velocity, etc., burn down, all of these delightful things, but very few of them actually focus on how enjoyable our experience is, how we are feeling as people.